Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Week 10 waiver wire targets for the fantasy football season. Now, exactly what am I going to be talking about? I'm going to be giving you names of players at the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position that I think can help fill your rosters for Week 10 for those of you who are dealing with bye weeks or perhaps injuries that are taking place, and maybe even players that are on your roster that just haven't been fantasy relevant for a couple weeks. I'm going to give you names of players that have been on the up and up, and going forward should be names that honestly shouldn't be on your waivers anymore. These are guys that are going to be fantasy relevant going forward. So I'm going to give you names of those kind of guys and who I think are the best waiver wire targets for Week 10. Following that, I'm going to be going over my Week 9 fantasy football standouts. Going to be talking about the performances from this past week and exactly how I see specific players and performances to look rest of season. As we enter the fantasy playoffs, we're on the home stretch, everybody, and these last couple of weeks, these wins count, and they count more than any of the other wins. I'll let you know that much because it's coming down. It's critical. It's going to be extremely, extremely nerve-wracking, but we'll get there. Either way, I want to thank all of you who have subscribed. If you haven't yet, go down, click the subscribe button, and for those of you who are already subscribed, that like button's down there waiting to be liked. And let's get right into it, shall we? Hey, everybody, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. It's Monday, and we're getting through it, shall we? All right, so let's talk about the running back position for the fantasy football Week 10 waiver wire targets. Now, number one we have Duke Johnson of the Cleveland Browns. This coming week plays against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, here's the thing. Duke Johnson is the second-string running back for the Cleveland Browns. Earlier this season, just really wasn't effective. I would say all of this season he wasn't effective at all for the Cleveland Browns until this past week where he went off. He had a Duke Johnson game, which we kind of expected for him to have more often than he has this season. Duke Johnson for the Cleveland Browns has been that go-to third down back, a guy that they used a lot as of the last couple of years because with the rookie quarterbacks that the Cleveland Browns have had in the past, they've always had to play from behind the sticks, right? They're always down 14-plus points, and why would you put in a running back that's a bruiser when you can put in Duke Johnson, a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield and be effective in the passing game? So with the firing of Hugh Jackson and the offensive coordinator from this past week of the Cleveland Browns, Duke Johnson was re-implemented within this offense, used the way he's supposed to be used, and Duke Johnson had himself a fantastic fantasy week in which a lot of us didn't expect him to have. Obviously, the shift of the coordinator could have made a big difference, and I believe it did. He got a lot more snaps. He was way more efficient. Just statistically, 2 receiving touchdowns, 78 receiving yards on 9 receptions. He is clearly going to be the receiving back because Nick Chubb is more that ground and pound style that he's been playing with all of this season and, what he did in college at Georgia. So as of right now, Duke Johnson, I think he's a good waiver wire pickup going forward. He's a guy that in your PPR leagues can be extremely valuable. I don't see him having, 25 fantasy point weeks, very often, but I think he's a safe floor of 10 points out of flex, especially in a PPR half-point PPR scoring format. That's what he was all of last season. In full-point PPR formats, Duke Johnson was a top 12 running back at the end of the 2017 season. Just put that into perspective. He is a very talented running back in PPR. He is extremely valuable, so if he hasn't been picked up in your league, he is sitting on your waivers and you are considering you're dealing with bye weeks, injuries, Duke Johnson's a great pickup going forward. So, and especially in the matchup, I like the matchup against the Falcons this coming week. All right. The number 2 running back I wanted to mention is Elijah McGuire. I mentioned him last week at a little bit of an extent, but not as detailed. Elijah McGuire, prior to the season beginning in the offseason, was slated to be the number 1 running back of this team. I understand they brought in Isaiah Crowell to be that bruising back, but he wasn't slated. Isaiah Crowell wasn't the number 1 back per se in the preseason. It was Elijah McGuire. There was a lot of talk coming out of the Jets organization that they really liked the way Elijah McGuire had been performing in camp and that he was going to be the number 1. Then he sustained an injury which held him out till just about right now. where they had to place him on injured reserve and wasn't eligible to come back until last week, where he practiced a little bit. The reason why Bilal Powell was still on the Jets this season was because of the injury that took place to Elijah McGuire. They planned on cutting Bilal Powell because they thought this kid was so good he could just do everything Powell was able to do and more. So this last week, what did Elijah McGuire accomplish? Well, with a limited amount of snaps and touches, he was pretty explosive. 37 rushing yards, 30 receiving yards on 3 receptions, 8.2 points in fantasy. Now, why is that relevant? Well, he came out and he outperformed Isaiah Crowell on a limited touch basis. He had 6 touches and already had 60 yards, when we have Isaiah Crowell burning through touches and barely breaking 38, I think. Elijah McGuire going forward, he is the future for this backfield of the the Jets, and I think going forward, he is going to continue and get more and more snaps, because the way that the Jets are playing as of late, they're not looking too great. And the fact of the matter is, good old Sam Darnold back there, he's going to need some help. He needs a running back that at least he can check the ball down to. I just realized that I messed up the graphic. They do not play the Dolphins this week. That was last week's matchup. In fact, the Jets play the Buffalo Bills this coming week, which isn't a terrible matchup. I understand the Bills defense can get a little stingy and they can clamp down on people, but I think Elijah McGuire rest of season is a good idea. If you're playing in a deeper league and you think you need a little bit more running back depth going forward, especially if you have an injury, or guys, like Dalvin Cook on bye week. Oh yeah, by the way, bye weeks: Baltimore, Denver, Houston, and Minnesota. So if you have any of these running backs, right, Lamar Miller, Phillip Lindsay, Alex Collins, Javoris Allen, Latavius Murray, it's a guy that you can go and plug in there this coming week. All right, let's move on to the next guy I wanted to mention. Let's talk about Mike Davis of the Seattle Seahawks, running back. Now, here's the thing. Chris Carson, he played this past week, but he had the questionable tag, and eventually what happened, Chris Carson, he wasn't able to stay in the game. He wasn't able to produce because he's too injured. He's not going to be able to get the full workload that we expect him to get, and that is exactly what Mike Davis wants. Mike Davis comes in, gets himself, 12 plus touches, has himself a pretty good game against the Chargers defense, which looked pretty good the other day. But Mike Davis, this coming week, if Chris Carson isn't a full go, Mike Davis is a good enough running back. We've seen him with a full workload be efficient within this offense. This is a run-first offense as of right now. I understand Russell Wilson is a fantastic quarterback, but as of right now, what they have established for the Seattle Seahawks this season, they've changed the culture. They're back to that run-first option, and that's why they're burning through running backs. Chris Carson, Mike Davis, then maybe they're going to use their shot penny in the future. But as of right now, Mike Davis is that number 2. If Chris Carson isn't able to go, Mike Davis is a good pickup. If he's available in your league and you're thin at running back, Chris Carson's looking a little banged up. Mike Davis is not a bad play this coming week. All right, let's move on to the number 4 running back. Okay, so here's the thing. This is just a reminder for those of you. If Dalvin Cook is somehow sitting on your waivers, absolutely go pick him up. Okay, yes, he played this past week on a limited snap count. If I'm not mistaken, he played fantastic. I'm going to pull up these stats really quickly. On a limited snap count, I think he had 15 total snaps this past week. He was able to, I think he broke 100 total yards. Here we go. Let's pull this up. So on 10 carries, he was able to get 89 rushing yards. And on 4 receptions, was able to have 20 receiving yards. In a PPR setting, he broke what? I think that's about 12 points. Half point PPR, that's 12 points. Dalvin Cook, he looked good. He ripped off that 70-yard run. Here's the thing. As soon as Dalvin Cook comes back, they know for a fact that Latavius Murray is not the running back of the future. Yes, they're going to use him, but he's going to play second fiddle to Dalvin Cook. So if he's available in your league, someone has somehow dropped him, and you need running back depth, absolutely he should be your number 1 waiver wire pickup. I don't care if he's if he's on a bye this week. He is on a bye, and I don't really care about that because Dalvin Cook is an extremely versatile running back that is going to get a lot of carries, a lot of opportunity within this offense. He's going to have himself a pretty good rest of the fantasy season. So that's Dalvin Cook for you. let's mention the last guy, the running back position that I want to talk about. Just to mention really quickly, this does not count or if there is a name that somehow breaks out in that Cowboys versus Titans game, that is currently going as I speak. I could not, wait. I just had to record this video before that game ends. That's usually how it works. So if there's a running back, I'm sure Dion Lewis, he's going to have a pretty good game today, right? But he probably is not available in your leagues. But if he is, Dion Lewis, guys, he's a great running back. But anyway, the last running back I wanted to mention, a guy that is kind of a little bit under the radar, plays next Sunday night against the Cowboys. Josh Adams, the running back for the Eagles. Now, here's the thing. Corey Clement, as of the last couple of weeks, has absolutely disappeared. Wendell Smallwood has been decent. He played well against the Jaguars the last time we saw him. But Josh Adams has been the more effective running back. He is basically picking up the role that Jay Ajayi has left void within this offense. They need a running back to run downhill and be able to force the issue on a weekly basis. And that's what Josh Adams is turning into. Last time we saw him, 9 carries for 61 rushing yards, about 6.8 yards per carry. He looked fantastic last time we saw him. And I think as they acclimate him more and more within this offense, he's going to get more carries. He's the kind of running back that the Eagles want for their first and second down play, especially behind that really, really good offensive line. They're gonna put a big boy back there, like LeGarrette Blount, like they had last season. They need a guy to be able to fill that void. J.J. is no longer there. Clement and Smallwood, they're not going to be able to do that. Josh Adams, a guy that I think going forward could have a very big impact in fantasy and for the Eagles. So just a name to watch out for, waiver wire wise. That's pretty much it at the running back position. So it's a pretty skinny week. I've mentioned a lot of guys in the past. But here's the thing about the running back position, guys. As of right now, it's getting thin. It's getting to the end of the season. A lot of people are picking up players. A lot of players are getting injured, disappearing, and it's gotten to the point where it's going to get ever so competitive to pick up players and determine who is going to have that breakout season rest of the year between players. So here we go. Let's talk about the wide receiver position. Let's do this again. Just to mention, the Baltimore Ravens, Denver Broncos, Houston Texans, Minnesota Vikings are on bye week for week 10. So I will not be mentioning any of those players unless they're extremely valuable, like I did with Dalvin Cook on the last screen. Now let's talk about the wide receiver position. Number 1, Marquez Valdes-Scantling of the Green Bay Packers. Now, the news came out earlier today that Geronimo Allison, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, will be undergoing surgery. I guess, there is an abdomen issue or something. He's having some sort of surgery on his stomach. I don't know what exactly he did, but I guess he hasn't been healthy. He came back last week against the Rams. They said, okay, he's playing, he's active. Yet I didn't hear anything about this injury that had taken place until this week, until, boom, all of a sudden he's out. And he's out for the rest of the season, if I'm not mistaken. They'll probably drop him on the IR. And even if he's not, I doubt they'll use him when he comes back. It's probably not a procedure that you're going to be able to recover from very quickly. So Marquez Valdes-Scantling, wide receiver of the Packers. Randall Cobb, bye-bye. Okay, they tried to get rid of you. They tried to trade you earlier this season. You're pretty much out of the offense. So this is the new number 2 on the Aaron Rodgers offense. Aaron Rodgers, as of late, if they're going to double team Devontae Adams, he's either giving the ball to good old Valdes-Scantling or Jimmy Graham, and that's a pretty big piece of the offense. You want a wide receiver within a Aaron Rodgers offense, especially with the capabilities and the opportunity that he's going to get. He's been great each of the last 3 weeks. Going forward, he's going to be fantastic rest of the season. He's a guy that you can start at your wide receiver 3 spot going forward, and I like him a lot. He could be a number 1 waiver wire acquisition this week for sure. Now, let's go to number 2, Tyrell Williams of the Chargers, playing against the Raiders this week. Guys, start everybody against the Raiders. Start them all. Goodness gracious. And if you have any Raiders, drop them. Honestly, the only ones I'd ever consider playing is like Jalen Richard or maybe Doug Martin. But even then, I just can't trust that they're tanking. They're throwing games. So Tyrell Williams, if he is not picked up already within your league, which I doubt at this point because he's caught, I think, 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So as of right now, coming out with this performance last week, I think he only had 2 catches on 3 targets and a touchdown. That's what's going to happen, right? But as of right now, Tyrell Williams, where do I see him rest of the season? I think at least this week he has a very good opportunity. Rest of the season, we saw Keenan Allen come back to being Keenan Allen. Melvin Gordon is going to be great. So it's going to either be Tyrell Williams or Mike Williams. Both of them have caught touchdowns each of the last 2 games that they have played. So is it going to be one over the other? I think it's just a coin toss from here on out, but I like Tyrell Williams taking the top off the defense against the Raiders, a defense that really is just terrible. So this coming week, if Tyrell Williams is available, he's a great pickup and play. All right, number 3, Maurice Harris. Okay, now here's the thing about this guy. Many of you don't know him, and to be honest, I saw his name earlier this week when I was doing the Hidden Gems video, and I thought to myself, with all these wide receivers of the Redskins banged up, who's going to be able to step up and, act upon opportunity? They played against the Falcons last week with a defense that is not great, and Maurice Harris and Josh Doxson were able to step up and do some stuff. Josh Doxson was able to catch, 3 balls, a touchdown, had 10 fantasy points and half on PPR, no big deal. But Maurice Harris was more of a surprise in my opinion. Came out, had 12 targets, 10 receptions for 124 receiving yards. What? Okay, so if this guy's automatically just become Alex Smith's number 1 go-to at the wide receiver position because of the injuries to Paul Richardson and Jamison Crowder and Chris Thompson, then Maurice Harris should be looked at. And coming into this coming week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that's been giving up a ton of points on a weekly basis. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the Carolina Panthers dropped 35 points in the first half on them and then just killed the clock in the second half and tried to hold off Ryan Fitzpatrick, which they did easily. But they dropped 35 in the first half. This Buccaneers defense is not good at all. I think Maurice Harris, you could look at him. If you're getting 12 targets in a singular week, 10 receptions, you're being efficient with it, 100 total receiving yards. I'm not sure how dependable we can be on Harris going forward, but I think he's a name that you should keep your eye on. And if those of you who are willing to take that little risk and think, hey, this Buccaneers matchup is juicy and he had a pretty good week with Alex Smith this past week, he could continue, go for it. All right. Number 4, we have Adam Humphries. Speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, oh my goodness, Adam Humphries, huh? The last 2 weeks, I think the last 3 weeks, he's being used more and more within this offense. And I would say it's no surprise, but at the same time, it kind of is. Adam Humphries, he's usually a guy that works a lot with Jameis Winston. When we've seen Jameis Winston in years past, Adam Humphries is that go-to slot kind of receiver. So this is the way the offense is broken down. We have Mike Evans on one side of the field. On the other, it's going to be Godwin. And then in the slot, it's going to be Adam Humphries. And then you're not going to really see much of Deshaun Jackson or Cameron Brate because O.J. Howard, the start of the week at the tight end position, had a fantastic week. And he's going to continue to be great with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center. Ryan Fitzpatrick, after this last performance, I understand he started slow, but it doesn't matter. As I mentioned, guys, he comes out and he slings it 100% effort, full heart. But anyway, we'll go over him later. Adam Humphries this past week against the Carolina Panthers had 2 touchdowns, 80 receiving yards, 4 receptions, something like that. A game script that honestly consisted of all passing. And I think that's how it's going to be rest of season. So guys like Adam Humphries, yes, I don't know if I can trust it to an extent, but I know for a fact that he is going to be relevant as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick is under center. They have to throw the ball on a consistent basis. And if Adam Humphries is going to be that slot receiver, he had 8 receptions for 82 yards. Okay, that makes a big difference because, Chris Godwin only had 2 receptions. Deshaun Jackson, 2 receptions. Mike Evans, 1 reception on 10 targets. I'm sorry, Mike Evans owners. You can blame him because, goodness gracious, that's embarrassing, right? 10% catch rate, that's not great. But Adam Humphries was the go-to this past week because he was the only one catching the ball. But he was able to produce at least 8 receptions, 82 yards. Goodness, he's a guy that could be great going forward. We saw the Redskins. really quickly, there's a lot of pretenders in the NFL. There's a lot of 5-win teams that really aren't good. The Redskins, the Dolphins, they're a bunch of jokes. Don't worry, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they could pick up a win this week against this here Redskins team, especially if Ryan Fitzpatrick is slinging it. In a shootout, the Redskins, they are not a good team. We saw them get completely boat raced this past week, which means, hey, the Falcons scored so many points that the Redskins couldn't get to where they wanted to be. The Redskins want to get up 1 touchdown and run the clock out with Adrian Peterson. They can't do that when they're getting points dropped on their head and they're down 21. When you're down 21 and your main source of offense is running the ball, you're not going to be able to win games in the NFL. So this coming week, Scans, just be careful. So Adam Humphries could be a good play. All right, number 5, Anthony Miller. He's going on the bye week, but the rookie for the Bears, Anthony Miller, has been great. Allen Robinson missing in action due to injury and just ineffective play, to be honest. So Anthony Miller has stepped up as that number 1 wide receiver. Taylor Gabriel missing in action, rest in peace. And I think Anthony Miller, as of the last 2 weeks, has been pretty effective in fantasy. Let me go ahead and pull up some statistics here. I think because of his obvious target count and the attempts that he's getting and him being on the field so often because of the fact that there are so many injuries to this team, it's looking good. Each of the last 3 weeks, right? 7 targets, 6 targets, right? And 2 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. His yards aren't great, but honestly, I don't expect very great yards within a Bears team with Mitchell Trubisky, unless you go for that deep play. You're not going to have 90 yards with short intermediate passes in the slot here and there. You're probably not going to see a huge target or a yard count out of Anthony Miller, but we could see something going forward. Let's see. So wait, I thought the Bears were on a bye week this week. Wait, what? Okay, they've already had their bye week. So that is a mistake. So you could definitely pick him up and you could definitely play him against the Detroit Lions. I was 100% convinced that they were on a bye week this week, but I guess they're not. All right, well, that has been fixed. They are not on a bye week, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony Miller is exactly playing this week, so you could pick him up and you could start him this week as a wide receiver 3 option, which he kind of looks like a good space right there against a Lions defense that hasn't looked great as of late, a Lions team that hasn't looked great as of late. So there you go, Anthony Miller. Now, the last option I want to talk about is Cordarrelle Patterson. Now, if Sony Michel does not come back this coming week, if he has a hiccup within the week, and perhaps that is that's a possibility. Sony Michel just doesn't feel right, and the team is not willing to use him because they have James White. Cordarrelle Patterson out of the backfield, this past week, 8 rushes, 61 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. He is being used a lot out of the backfield. He's taken a lot of value away from James White, who is still being effective, might I add. But as of right now, he has looked really good as a running back. Runs downhill, runs heavy, 11 carries, 61 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Had honestly one less carry than James White and was more effective, to be honest. Cordarrelle Patterson also, we know he's very, very dynamic in the special teams game, so he can get some points out of there. And he's a wide receiver within this team, so he doesn't really have to line up behind Tom Brady in order to score points. He's an option that, honestly, I don't know if they're going to be giving him that the running back tag so that you can play him in the running back position. But this is only for if Sony Michel does not play this week, because James White can't have every carry out of this backfield. He is not built to do that. So Cordarrelle Patterson could have some sneaky value. And just a name just to keep your eye out on. Okay, let's move on to the quarterback position. Now, as I mentioned before, and as I mentioned last week, by all means, if someone did not pick up Ryan Fitzpatrick in your league, if you did not pick up Ryan Fitzpatrick in your league, well, you deserve not to have those 30-plus points that he put up this past week, because Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to keep doing it on a weekly basis. Yes, he might be limited some weeks. Maybe he'll only throw 1 touchdown, but he's going to throw a bunch of yards. He is going to be good. Why? This man plays with heart. Have you guys seen him? If you haven't seen him play, if you don't watch some of the games on Sunday, some of you are busy, some of you guys, honestly, I don't know. It happens, right? Schedules, some of you go to church, doesn't matter, right? But as of right now, Ryan Fitzpatrick, especially when he tucks the ball and runs, This dude's trying to he's lining up to lay out linebackers. It's absolutely hilarious. This guy takes shots. He stays in the pocket. He delivers the ball. And he's been so good as of late. The specific statistic I wanted to mention with you guys, since the beginning of the season, quarterback play from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, except for when they played against the Bears, okay? That's the only week. But every other week, the quarterback position of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has been a QB1. What does that mean? That they've played within the top 10 of the position when it comes to scoring on a weekly basis, all except for that Tampa Bay versus Bears game in week 4. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, they've always been QB1s this season. Going forward, they're going to consistently be that. They have so many weapons, and this offense is so good. The defense is so bad. They're going to have to, keep up score. Please tell me that he is not available on your waivers, because if he is, goodness gracious, you better go get him. All right, number 2, Baker Mayfield, who's looked pretty good as of late. Baker Mayfield putting up, 2 touchdowns a week on a weekly basis, looking pretty good. This offense they kept up with the Kansas City Chiefs until they put the pedal to the metal and separated themselves from the Cleveland Browns team. But Baker Mayfield as of late, let me read some stats for you. All right, each of the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 touchdowns, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 297 yards passing. So he's looked pretty decent in fantasy. He's progressing to be a better and better quarterback. This coming week plays against the Atlanta defense. I know they didn't give up a lot of points to the Redskins, but that's what happens when the Redskins don't have a passing game. They're going to be often inefficient. So here's the thing. Baker Mayfield, he's got the weapons. Hopefully this offense continues to move the way they're supposed to. But here's the thing that kind of worries me. Both of his touchdown passes this past week were to Duke Johnson. That does help, but I'd like to see more down the field David Njoku or Jarvis Landry play, just to give me a little bit more confidence. But as of right now, I do not mind if I'm dealing with, the bye week of, per se, Deshaun Watson or Kirk Cousins. I don't think that Baker Mayfield's a bad idea. Just saying. All right, speaking of a team that can't throw the ball, I have to just mention them. I have to mention Alex Smith. Why? Because he plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. By all means, if you cannot score on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, Alex Smith, then you need to just retire, buddy, dude. It's so easy. I don't care if you have high school receivers, college receivers, Little League. I don't care. Pop Warner. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense is giving up so many points all across the field that you better be able to do something, Alex Smith. By all means. You had a decent game this past week, especially with all those receivers that were out. You had a decent game as a quarterback, right? You don't turn over the ball often. You took a couple shots here and there. But Alex Smith, hopefully you can figure it out. Hopefully you can score against Tampa Bay. I like the matchup, but Alex Smith, he's kind of a sketchy play here and there. All right, the last quarterback I wanted to mention, Blake Bortles, baby. I understand Blake Bortles is a trash can, but he plays against the Colts. And if the Colts could make Derek Carr look decent a couple weeks back, then what could they do to Blake Bortles? Honestly, Derek Carr came out and he scored what? He threw 3 touchdown passes. Then he followed it up with a week in which he had 7 fantasy points. Not even. I think it was 6 fantasy points. He was terrible against the 49ers defense. Okay? So if the Colts defense can make you look good, maybe they can make Blake Bortles look relevant. I think there's a possibility, especially I know many of you don't have that little of depth within your waiver wire. I'm sure there's guys like Matthew Stafford available within your waiver wire because he's probably people are giving up on Matthew Stafford as of late. So let me look at this list of games this coming week. So who could we potentially play that could be a decent start? So Matthew Stafford, but he plays against the Bears. Do we want to trust that? It's sketchy. Andy Dalton against the Saints. That's not a bad play, but I'm afraid that Saints defense is pretty legit when they really want to be. I mean, if they can hold the Rams to a minimal offense, I mean, they still had 400 yards, but they still held the Rams. Who else? Mariota against the Patriots. Nope, don't want that. Not playing Derek Carr ever again. That is a mistake. Never again. Literally, until he is on another team, you do not want to play Derek Carr, people. Eli, nope. Chris Mullen, maybe? Or Nick Mullen, excuse me. I was going with the basketball player. Nick Mullen could be a good play. Nah, I don't know. Anyway, those are the quarterbacks. Let's move on. Has a lot of names, guys. A lot of names, a lot of opportunity, but you just have to be able to find the right play, and it just sometimes is luck. You just never know. Andrew Luck, I don't know. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's talk about the tight end waiver wire targets. Not that many this week. Only 3 guys that I honestly trust, because some of these guys that I've mentioned are letting me down. What happened to Ed Dixon? I have no clue, but Nick Vannett somehow managed to have 8 targets, 6 receptions, and a touchdown. So I don't honestly know. You got to ask Pete Carroll. You don't have to ask me anymore. All right, number 1 is Jack Doyle coming off the bye week. Going to be the number 1 tight end on this offense. We know how much the Indianapolis Colts love to use the tight end position with Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron both on the field at the same time. They're both going to be effective, and I think rest of season, I understand it's a difficult matchup against the Jaguars D, but I think Jack Doyle going forward should have a pretty good opportunity and a pretty good season rest of season. So I think of all the tight ends I'm going to mention, he is the number 1 pickup for sure if you are in need of a tight end due to bye week injury, etc. I mean, those of you who own Gronk, you might want to think about picking up a Doyle kind of player. Anyway, number 2, Ben Watson continues to be good even though he's 37 years old, and he continues to produce. This coming week against the Bengals, not a bad matchup to have a good week. If he's going to continue to be used within this offense, I heard that the Saints are going out and they're looking, I think they're going to be working out Des Bryant, Brandon Marshall, and one other wide receiver this coming week. Because the Saints need, they're not satisfied with Traquan Smith, obviously. So I don't know how that's going to work, but it might affect Ben Watson's production. But either way, this coming week, it's not going to be affected because they're not getting signed and playing this exact week. So Ben Watson, good option for this coming week. And Chris Herndon. Goodness gracious, guys. Chris Herndon has been fantastic in fantasy. For the tight end position, that has been absolute bonfire of dirt that's just burning to the ground as we speak. Chris Herndon, as of the last 4 weeks, I'm going to read his fantasy outputs. You ready? In half-point PPR, 12.6, 12.2, 8.1, 8.2. Sounds good to me. Honestly, that sounds great to me. He's looking pretty decent within an offense that has struggled a lot with Sam Bradford. Sorry, nope, that's Sam Darnold throwing a lot of interceptions. Goodness gracious, Sam Bradford. Why do you have to make your appearance every time when I'm talking about Darnold? I can't help it, people. I cannot. All right, anyway, so that's Chris Herndon. Playing well as of late. And I think going forward, if you're really struggling at the tight end position, could be a good pickup for you guys. Anyway, those are the waiver wire targets for week 10 of the fantasy football season. From the running back position to the wide receiver, quarterback, to here the tight end position. For those of you looking for a guy to pick up due to injuries, bye weeks, and or inefficient play. You know, there's a lot of guys that drop goose eggs on a weekly basis. So sometimes you overreact and bench them, but sometimes they really need to be benched, aka perhaps some Lamar Miller going forward. Anyway, let's talk about the defensive waiver wire targets and the defensive streaming targets. This coming week, it's pretty simple, all right? I've broken it down at a pretty easy formula. From here on out, you will start every defense against the Raiders, the Bills, the Jets, and sometimes against another team that I have a good feeling about. But why the Raiders? The Raiders are a trash can. They are tanking games on purpose. They do not want to win games. Therefore, and especially with the Chargers playing so well as of late, they're a great stream this coming week. Perhaps teams in your league have dropped them because they were playing against the Seahawks this past week. So if they are available, the Chargers defense, it's a good pickup. All right, now, the Jets versus the Bills. Why do you want to play the Jets defense? Well, the Bills have Nathan Peterman at quarterback. You want to hear this statistic? The Bills in the last 75 passing attempts have thrown more pick sixes than passing touchdowns. Let that sink in for a little bit. You'll understand. All right, so and the third defense, you might want to consider playing the Buffalo Bills defense. Now, why exactly would we want to play the Buffalo Bills defense? Isn't that the same game? Yes, but Sam Darnold has thrown so many interceptions this season. I think he may lead the league in interceptions. He has thrown 14 passing interceptions for this past week, 3 weeks back. I mean, there is a good opportunity that your defense can come out, especially the Buffalo Bills defense. That has been great this season in specific games. I understand they haven't been complete. They can't stop everything, right? If your offense is trash and Peterman is throwing pick sixes left, right, and center, there's going to be points on the board. And that doesn't technically mean the defense is mad. But we've seen the Buffalo Bills stop Tom Brady. We've seen them stop the offense of the Minnesota Vikings. We've seen them stop the offense of the Tennessee Titans this season, in which they played close games. So against they're not playing the Raiders. Damn it. They play against the Jets this week. All right, well, it's okay. Buffalo Bills defense, guys. They play against, I wish they were playing the Raiders. Goodness gracious. But they play against the Jets, all right? We know this. They play against the Jets. So that's another streaming defense that should be available in your league. The last defense I wanted to mention, I have a feeling that somehow Andy Dalton shows up this week and gets shellacked. Now, why am I thinking this? AJ Green is not playing this week because of the toe injury. I'm not sure if he's going to require surgery and how long he's going to be out. From what I heard, he's going to be out for 2 weeks, and then they're going to further evaluate him, then see where he ends up. Maybe he ends up on IR. But as of right now, without AJ Green, I know they have Tyler Boyd over there, and I know they have Joe Mixon, but they've stopped the run pretty hard as of late, and I'm not sure exactly if Tyler Boyd's enough to stop the suppression of the New Orleans Saints. The Saints could have a good defensive week, sneaky, so there are an option. Anyway, so that's pretty much it when it comes to waiver wire targets. Let's move on to the Week 9 standouts. All right, here we go. Let's start at the quarterback position for Week 9. We have Drew Brees at the number 1 slot this past week at least. Man, Drew Brees played out of his mind. I knew he was going to be good because it was going to be a shootout, but I didn't think he'd be that good. Him, Michael Thomas, and Alvin Kamara played out of their damn minds. And they were, I think all of them were top 3 at the position. Drew Brees and Michael Thomas were both number 1s, and Alvin Kamara was the number 3 running back, if I wasn't mistaken. So, goodness gracious, they're rolling right now. They just beat the only undefeated team in the NFL, and they feel like they are the number 1 team in the NFC. As I mentioned before, they are looking to go and sign another wide receiver. They're working out Brandon Marshall and Dez Bryant later this week. So if they feel, they want to make the Super Bowl push. They feel they're ready defensively, offensively, special teams. They're looking good. The rest of the season schedule should be good, considering their division. The Panthers, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers, they give up a lot of points. And a lot of those games are going to be shootouts, but we've seen the Saints win shootouts left, right, and center all season long. So as of right now, as long as they're going to bring in more help to make Drew Brees a better quarterback rest of the season, he should be great. I understand I think 2 weeks ago, he had that 8-point week. It wasn't great, but going forward, he should be fine. He played lights out the other night. I don't think he got sacked once against the offensive line where everyone was, oh my God, they have 4 first-round picks. Okay, first of all, they had 5 first-round picks. When you have Ndamukong Suh, Aaron Donald, sure, we know that. They brought in Fowler via the trade, and then they had, what's his name? Goodness gracious, am I really going to forget it? I think they had Michael Brockers, the other defensive tackle that no one wants to talk about. And then they have another one. Where is the last damn defensive lineman for this team? Or were they already mentioning Michael Brock? No, come on. They had one more. Who the heck is the other defensive lineman for this team? Do they not have another defensive end? Good. Maybe it's eluded me at this point, so we're moving on. All right. Anyway, it's a big kudos to the offensive line of the Saints. They've looked fantastic as of late. All right, number 2, Matt Ryan. I knew he'd be good, but I didn't think he'd be that good. Again, same thing with Drew Brees, man. These offenses of the NFC South, the Falcons, the Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers, guys, these offenses are lights out, the best in the league. As of right now in the NFL, you want to know how to win games? You got to play shootouts. It's old Western, draw and fire and just try to beat Patrick Mahomes. That's basically it. And that's what the NFC South is all about, baby. Matt Ryan had himself a great week, got Julio involved, got Calvin Ridley back involved. Tevin Coleman had a good week. Therefore, Matt Ryan looked fantastic. All right, number 3, Jared Goff. Knew he'd be good. Had a better week. Why? Because Cooper Kupp came back, baby. I'm telling you guys, Cooper Kupp was the difference between all of Jared Goff's poor performances in the weeks prior. Cooper Kupp makes the difference 100%. It is a fact, and it shows in his fantasy statistics thus far this season. He had a great week. Going forward, trust in Jared Goff. I understand he struggled a little bit, but he still didn't matter because he put up a lot of fantasy points this past week. All right, number 4 was Patty Mahomes. Honestly, this guy could drop 50 on you any given Sunday. The only reason he didn't was the Cleveland Browns defense gave him a little bit of troubles here and there. Obviously, it didn't really make a difference because Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, they were able to do what they do best, and that's score the ball and move the ball efficiently. They did that with ease this past week, and going forward, I mean, until he has that bye week, he is the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. He's the MVP as of right now in the NFL and in fantasy. So going forward, it's Patty Mahomes, baby. Fire him up. Let's move on to the number 5 quarterback. As I was mentioning, the NFC South quarterbacks. We have 32 points from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 6-point per passing touchdown league if you have not already figured that out. Ryan Fitzpatrick, oh my goodness, dude. 4 passing touchdowns. 2 to O.J. Howard, 2 to Adam Humphries. Looked great. Even with, Mike Evans catching 1 out of the 10 targets, and Godwin being pretty limited. He was still able to produce offensively. He's a guy that is going to play with absolute heart, and he's going to give it all his all every single week. And no matter if they're down 20, well, I think they were down 7-35. It didn't matter. Why? Because Ryan Fitzpatrick comes out to try to win games. He is going to put up points no matter what. He's a good enough quarterback, and he's got a good offense surrounding him. So he's going to continue to be great. He was number 5 this past week. Goodness gracious. He looked good. All right, number 6, we had Ben Roethlisberger. I got a little afraid when Roethlisberger got ran down and sacked. When he wasn't getting up, he was grabbing his shoulder. I was like, oh, here we go. Here it is. This is the end. Because those Ravens, man, they're a frightening defense. But when they get after Ben Roethlisberger, they somehow manage to hurt him every year. But this year, he was fine. Took 1 play off, came back in, was just fine, had a great week. I think Antonio Brown has had 6 receiving touchdowns. Each of 1 receiving touchdown for the last 6 weeks. So he's been pretty consistent with Antonio Brown. You keep your number 1 target happy. You're going to keep your offense happy. And James Conner looks great. The running game looks great. They're keeping this guy protected as much as they possibly can. But going forward, he was able to show up a Ravens defense in Baltimore. He should be great rest of the season. Nick Mullins was number 7 this week. I don't know if he's doing that again, but it was 100% a product of the Raiders defense being complete ass this past week. They were just garbage cans. So going forward, I don't know how much I trust him. He plays against the Giants this week, but Giants defense isn't that bad to let Nick Mullins absolutely run all over them and pass the ball however much he'd like. All right, number 8 was Cam Newton. Here's the thing about Cam Newton. Cam Newton could have had a better week, but Christian McCaffrey just kept stealing rushing touchdowns from him. And I'm honestly, I think Cam Newton could have been a 40-point quarterback this week. But the plays that Christian McCaffrey was making on the ground, the fullback stealing a touchdown, and then on top of that, what's his name? Goodness, Curtis Samuel. We'll talk about him later. Curtis Samuel did break the hearts. I'll mention him later this week, but I did call it. I knew it was going to happen. Curtis Samuel took some, ended around to the house for 40 yards. Cam Newton could have easily been a 40, maybe 50-point quarterback this week with the matchup. Got 25. That's good enough. All right, number 9, we had Deshaun Watson. Goodness gracious. I keep doubting this kid, and he keeps showing me up. So in week 11, when you come back, Deshaun, I'll make sure I give you a good ranking. All right, no problem. All right, number 10, Russell Wilson. Looked decent, was good. Only 2 touchdowns this week. Should have been 3. The guy, it got tipped out of his damn hands. Should have been 3 touchdowns this week. Should have, a 29-point game next to Ben Roethlisberger, just a little bit more than Ben. But no big deal. He'll get it next week against the Rams. All is well. All right, let's move on to the running back position from this past week. We had, oh my goodness, Kareem Hunt, right? He's a monster. He's going to do this from here on out. Why? Because he's just too good. And if they're playing against bad defenses, which that's pretty much what the AFC West, that's what it basically consists of, bad defenses. I don't think the Chargers and the Raiders and the Broncos are going to be able to stop us out. Well, they've already played the Broncos twice. I don't think they're going to be able to stop them going forward. So Kareem Hunt, goodness gracious. Alvin Kamara was number 2. What a surprise. The statistic I saw, he is the first running back since Jim Brown to rush for 3 touchdowns in 3 separate games in a singular season. So that's a pretty cool stat for Alvin Kamara. That's crazy, dude. That's actually insane. Bye-bye, Mark Ingram, baby. Bye-bye. They're going to cut you. Next season, they ain't going to pay you that contract. You're useless. All right, number 3, we have Christian McCaffrey. Knew he would have a good game, but goodness gracious, didn't see 3 touchdowns in his future. But I'll take it. He had a fantastic week, and I like it a lot. Number 4, Tevin Coleman. As I mentioned, right, the NFC South. Look at that. Saints, Panthers, Falcons. Tevin Coleman, number 4, 30 points, looking good. I didn't want him to have a 30-point week. Why? Because I want Tevin Coleman to have 15-point weeks every single week. I don't want him to break out, then show up and only put up 8. I need 15 every single week from this guy. I'm sure all of you do. That's what we've drafted him for, especially with Devontae Freeman being out. We want him to be more efficient going forward. Hopefully he can end up being what we expect him to be. I can only hope. James Conner, number 5, not a surprise. I knew they were going to be able to. I think I ranked Conner at like 6 this past week. I knew he was going to be great. Why? Because he's just too good of a running back. Behind this offensive line, when they're getting going, especially midway through the season, they just barrel over teams. They do not give a F. And James Conner's been way too good this season. He's breaking records left, right, and center. I think, reading statistics, by the way, another record, James Conner's the first Steeler to break or go over all-purpose 1,000 yards and have 10 touchdowns within the first 9 games of the season. So there's a stat. Le'Veon Bell, I know you're sending out cryptic tweets, but I don't know if you're going to be able to come back and compete with this kid. He's just way too good as of right now. Number 6, we have James White. I mean, with Sony Michel being out, James White's going to continue to be fantastic. Even with Cordarrelle Patterson taking yards and touchdowns, it doesn't matter. James White is the go-to within this offense. He is a stud, and he's carrying fantasy teams without a doubt. Number 7, Duke Johnson, as I mentioned before, he is pretty much a poor man's James White. That's literally what he is. He's a poor man's James White. If you do not have James White, well, Duke Johnson, if you go and pick him up this week, he can be the exact same thing, just not as efficient because he's not going to be used as much within the offense. Hopefully he will be. You can just only wait and see. But Duke Johnson had himself a fantastic game. Hopefully can continue going forward. And the best part about it is that it did not hurt Nick Chubb's production. Nick Chubb still had his 80 yards, still had his rushing touchdown. Fantastic. I like that. They're using both running backs, exclusively separate from each other, and it's going to be a good backfield of production going forward. All right, number 8, Melvin Gordon. Dude, Melvin Gordon is so good. He had some big runs. Obviously, didn't have a big of a week that we expected him to, but it's all good. Melvin Gordon is going to continue to be, 15-plus points a week, sometimes 20, 30 points a week. This week, just a little bit of a downgrade from usual, but no big deal. He'll be back. He'll be better than ever. Here's another guy that just wasn't as good as we expected him to be. Todd Gurley, man, played against the best rushing defense in the NFL. They give up the fewest yards to the running back position, and it showed with Todd Gurley. They were able to stuff him consistently, and they were able to stop the running game. When you can stop the running game of the Rams, it is very, very, very effective to force Jared Goff to have to pass the ball, make mistakes like he did yesterday. Todd Gurley, those of you who are owners of Todd Gurley, don't be salty, okay? You've been having 30-point weeks every week, all right? Don't be salty because you lost this week, all right? You don't deserve the win if you have to rely upon him like 30 points every single week. All right, number 10, Jordan Howard. Looked great. Thought he would be good. Tariq Cohen was trash can this week, and Jordan Howard had all the touchdowns offensively for them. So Mitchell Trubisky was probably also a trash can. So let's move on to the next couple guys I want to talk about. Michael Thomas. Ooh, baby. 200 receiving yards, a touchdown, 12-plus receptions. Had a cell phone underneath the the little pad next to the goalpost. A buddy of mine mentioned it too. He was like, so you're telling me that, yes, he had a cell phone and he picked it up and he did that little celebration, but you're telling me there was another cell phone on the other goalpost, right? Because he didn't know which goalpost he was going to score on. So he must have hidden 2 whole cell phones. I wonder if he went and got the other one after the game. That is I don't know. I was laughing. I was like, yeah, he must have hidden both. Good point. Anyway, that's Michael Thomas. He's a stud. Had a great game after a couple weeks of just being average. Had himself a blow-up game. I like to see that. And helps out fantasy owners. All right, number 2 was Adam Humphries. Mentioned him before. Is this sustainable? No. But can he be a good slot receiver that can get 6 catches a week? Sure he can. Good wide receiver 3 going rest of the season could be a good option. 21 points from Julio. Had a touchdown. That's how you get 21 points, Julio. The touchdowns. Good shit, baby. This is half-point PPR, by the way. Josh Gordon. A touchdown, baby. He's here to make statements. He did. Looking good going forward, baby. DeAndre Hopkins, 21 points. Brandon Cooks, 20 points. Curtis Samuel. Goodness gracious. I knew he'd do it. I knew it. I knew he would. He really ruined the DJ Moore, Devin Funchess fantasy perspective or, prospect. They should have had great weeks. But goodness gracious, this running game, that damn fullback and Curtis Samuel. I knew Greg Olsen and McCaffrey were going to be good. But damn it, Curtis Samuel. Why? Why? All right, anyway, Keenan Allen looked fantastic, even without a touchdown. Cooper Kupp, as we know, and what's this? Yeah, Maurice Harris, as I mentioned before, 12 targets, 10 receptions, 124 yards. Looking pretty good. All right, tight end position. The wasteland, as I like to call it. Travis Kelce, number 1, he's a stud. O.J. Howard, number 2, he's a monster, as I projected. Jeff Harriman, what are you doing? Goodness, there's someone that asked me. They went down to the comment section. They're like, Andrew, of the available tight ends, and he named 4 tight ends, who do you think should play? I absolutely said, do not play Harriman. He is a trash can. I don't know if I said those exact words, but I meant it, okay? I meant to say that. Why? Because Harriman hasn't done anything as of late, okay? The most fantasy points that he has racked up this season is 7.7, and that was week 4. Otherwise, this guy gets about 5 targets a game, but then he'll have 1 catch, 2 catch, 2 catch, 4 catch, 2 catch, 3 catch, 1 catch. What did he do this past week? 11 targets, 10 receptions for 83 yards. He had more receptions. Well, okay, let's put it this way. He had 15 receptions in the last 8 weeks, and he had 10 receptions in this past week. So you tell me if this was a breakout game or a lucky experiment that somehow went the right way. That was Jeff Harriman. All right, George Kittle, stud muffin. Greg Olsen, welcome back. Nick Vannett, I hate you. It should have been Ed Dixon's stats. Ben Watson, you're 37 years old. You've got 5 kids to feed. I think you're having twins soon, so good luck. You got to keep playing. 40 years old should be a good prime year for you. Jimmy Graham, 13.5. There you go, Jimmy Graham. Way to come back. Trey Burton, decent. Vernon Davis, decent. Vernon Davis, man, 7 targets, 5 receptions. Where did Jordan Reed go? I don't know. Maybe Jordan Reed owners maybe need to just start playing Vernon Davis. They play against the Bucs this week. It's good opportunity. Anyway, that's pretty much it, everybody. I want to thank everybody for watching. And until next time, which is tomorrow, we're going to go over the running back position. I am sweating because it's hot in this house. Got to take off the jacket. The lights are burning me up. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't already, go down and subscribe. If you have any questions for waiver wire pickups, be sure to comment below. I may not get to them before in time, but if you want, go to my Twitter. If you do have a Twitter, go follow, send me a message. It can be absolutely private, does not matter. I will get back to you as probably faster on Twitter. That's the more effective thing, especially when I'm at work. Can't really answer questions on YouTube because I'm not here at the computer. So anyway, see you guys. Have a good day because it's Monday.